Welcome to a podcast by opentheword.org, where we discuss a bit of Bible, a bit of life, and a bit of politics.
Hi, my name is Dean Smith, and in this podcast, I want to discuss the importance of healing rejection wounds. There was an interesting study conducted by the University of California in 2003 that reveals the important truth about rejection. It's real and it hurts. But more than hurts, it can literally cause wounds or rejection wounds that can actually weaken you and make you vulnerable. The study involved scanning the brains of 13 people, nine women, 4 men, while they were playing a computer game. It involved a simple game where the people would play catch with 2 other members of the group. They would just simply throw the ball back to each other. And while they were doing this, their brains were being scanned. But there was a catch. While each player thought they were playing with 2 other members of their group, in fact, they weren't. They were playing catch with 2 computer simulations. While things went smoothly for 7 rounds, it changed in the 8th when the researchers programmed the simulations to only play catch with each other, ignoring the real human player. As the simulation ignored the real player for about 40 catches, their brains were being scanned. At the end, the players were asked questions about their response to what happened, and some admitted that they found the rejection quite stressful. The brain scans revealed 2 areas of activity. Not unexpectedly, that included the anterior ungulate cortex, which is referred to as the brain's emotional alarm system that activates in distressing and unexpected situations. The researchers also discovered that this area was more active in those who reported the highest levels of stress over the rejection experience. But another area of the brain that showed activity was the right ventral prefrontal cortex, which was a bit more unusual because studies have linked this area of the brain with how we deal with physical pain. This meant that the rejection people were feeling associated with this computer game felt like real physical pain. But the study also revealed that individuals were experiencing different levels of stress over the rejection. Some found it very difficult to handle. Though I can't be sure, it makes me wonder if the people experiencing high levels of stress were doing so because they were still suffering from previously unhealed rejection wounds, which made them more sensitive to rejection even at the lowest level. This reflects one of the biggest struggles that we will have with rejection, and that is to not take it personally. Unfortunately, our first inclination is to take rejection personally, but if we do, it causes a wounding and will impact us emotionally. In turn, this will affect our self-worth and will impact our self-confidence. 2 times in the Gospels, Jesus gave advice on how to deal with rejection. And in both passages, the main message that Jesus was giving us is don't take it personally. In Luke chapter 6, verse 26, Jesus warned his disciples, beware when all people speak well of you. What Jesus was saying is that there are people you don't want to like you. In other words, if we are living by our principles, we should not only expect rejection, but we should want it because it validates what we stand for. Then, in Matthew chapter 10, verse 22, Jesus warned his disciples that people will hate them, not because of who they are, but because they actually hate Jesus. In other words, don't take it personally. But there's more to it than just that. We all receive criticism for things that we are doing, and some of us look upon that as a form of rejection. If you are a creative person, people may not like your work, but it's important that we separate what we do with who we are. It would be ridiculous for me to say that I am no good because I can't play quarterback like NFL great Tom Brady, or I can't paint like Da Vinci. I am still valued in God's eyes, and that is ultimately what is important. But if I don't make this separation, then I will start taking criticism personally, resulting in a rejection wound. I remember a few months ago, someone made a comment and criticized one of my YouTube videos by stating, "Never trust anyone with a big, big mic." What has that got to do with anything? Look, some criticisms are legit, but many aren't. But either way, don't take it personally. And your reaction to criticism may actually reveal how personally you're taking it. Does it send you into a depression spiral? Do you start thinking you are no good and want to quit? Or maybe you go to the other extreme and get angry or outraged. If so, these may be indicators you are taking it too personally. However, sometimes it is unavoidable because there are times when the rejection is very, very personal. It is about you. The person doing the rejection makes sure that the rejection is personal. They want you to know you are being rejected. But even in these extreme instances of rejection, we need to understand it's sometimes not about you, but rather reflects problems inside the other individual. But what happens if you do? What happens if you do take rejection personally? Unfortunately, when we do take it personally, it creates a rejection wound in our heart. Several years back, I worked with an organization that was often involved in politics. It was late, Friday afternoon, around 5:30, and after a busy week, I was tired and I just wanted to go home when a man showed up at our office wanting to speak with someone. He had a briefcase in one hand and a handful of brochures in another, and introduced himself as being from a recently formed political party and wanted to tell our organization what it was all about. I had actually heard about this new political party and was actually interested in finding out more about them, but it was 5:30 and I just wanted to go home. I was not interested in spending another 2 hours talking politics on a Friday night. I was generally interested, and so I asked if I could meet with him next week. Could we make an appointment next week where we could talk about his political party? But that wasn't good enough, and he insisted that we talk that night. And again, I just repeated what I'd said 2 minutes earlier. I simply told him that I was interested, and I wondered if we could meet next week. In a matter of seconds, the man's mood changed. He became irritable and said that it was obvious I wasn't interested, even though I told him that I was. For the third time, I said I was interested, and I asked again if we could meet next week. Like I said previous, it was 5:30 on Friday night, and I just wanted to go home. In a huff, the man told me that obviously I wasn't interested and abruptly turned around, walked out that door, and I never heard from him again. This man was suffering a rejection wounding. He did not hear what I was saying. Everything I said was reinterpreted through his rejection blends. He believed I was rejecting him even though I wasn't. In the end, this man was essentially rejecting himself on my behalf. I didn't reject him. He rejected himself. He said I didn't want to hear him, even though I did. This man had a deep rejection wound, and because of it, he couldn't hear or understand what I was saying. People with rejection wounds see rejection even when it doesn't exist. The pastor walks past you after church without saying hi, and he thinks he hates you or he's avoiding you. In 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 3, the Apostle Paul makes an interesting statement in his first letter to the Corinthians. He spoke of the time that he first showed up at Corinth and how he didn't come with lofty speeches, but he approached them in weakness. And because of that, he came in fear and trembling. Here's what Paul said, quote, "I also was with you in weakness and fear and in great trembling," 1 Corinthians 2, verse 3, unquote. But notice how Paul's weakness not only caused him to lose confidence in himself, but to actually experience great trembling and even insecurity and self-doubt. The Greek word for weakness is athania, and refers to a weakness both physically, like, a chronic sickness. But as we can see in this verse, it also refers to emotional weakness, where we are racked with self-doubt, insecurity, and fear. But that Greek word shows up in another verse, Matthew 8, verse 17, that was used to explain part of Jesus' mission on earth. That verse reads, quote, "He took up our infirmities, athania, and bore our diseases." The verse tells us that in addition to healing our diseases, the Greek word, which is the Greek word pneumos, we read that Jesus also wants to take away our infirmities, our athania, our emotional weaknesses, our fears, our self-doubts, our insecurities, and our rejection wounds. He wants to take them away. But it's strange, because as we read through the Gospels, all we see are the dozens and dozens of times that Jesus miraculously healed the blind, he healed the lame and the diseased. Though these healings are visible throughout the Gospels, that verse in Matthew puts the unseen, invisible, emotional hurts first. It's almost like it's making them a priority by putting them before sickness and disease. It suggests that these unseen rejection wounds, these fears and these anxieties are equally important to Christ, and perhaps more common because that is put first before diseases. But in this verse describing a critical part of Jesus' ministry, we read that the Lord wants to take a hold of your infirmities. He wants to grab them and carry them away. The Greek word labano means to take by the hand, to lay a hold of and carry away. Jesus wants to take that rejection wound. He wants to remove it. He wants to take it from you. But if I'm clutching something in my hand, in order for someone to take it away from you, something has to happen. I have to let go and let Christ take it away. In the case of infirmities, I have to emotionally let go. And unfortunately, there's no easy way of doing this. In order to let go, we must forgive. We must forgive those who rejected us. Only then can the healing process begin.
Thanks again for joining us on our podcast. Please check out our website at opentheword.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to receive notifications of future broadcasts. As well, please take a moment to provide a rating and even a review. Thanks again for listening.